Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Becca, and usually I have very upbeat, happy, positive videos, and this is just not one of them. It is a topic that we get asked kind of a lot, like, what are things that you miss about home, and what do you not like about New Zealand? And usually I just kind of brush them off, because we absolutely love living here. We feel so lucky. It is such a beautiful place that has so much to offer, and so we tend to look at that side of things. I figured it might be a fun time to sit down and just talk about this topic and open up a conversation about the things that we don't necessarily love about New Zealand. Some of the things on this list are really small and trivial, and I kind of just added them for fun. And then the other things are just really big things that need a lot of change. That's true about anywhere you go. Like, you will never find a place that is perfect with no problems. And that's just kind of a problem with sensationalizing anywhere. Because, like, I know a lot of my friends and family back home think that we live in this utopia and that there aren't any real big problems here in New Zealand, because that's what the media and everything puts out. It's like, New Zealand is perfect and is amazing, which it is for the most part. But there are a few things that I have issues with, and so that's what this is all about. So, number one is traffic in Auckland. There's a reason there are so many jokes about the traffic in Auckland, because it sucks. Is it the worst of anywhere that I've been to? No, New York City is way more stressful and horrendous. And it's just one of those things, like, if you have a big city, traffic is unavoidable. So I don't really fault Auckland for it, and it's really not that big of a deal. But it's something that I don't love. The next point that goes along with that is how short-sighted the public transportation here in New Zealand is. So we realized that it's actually cheaper for us to drive into the city and pay to park the car than it is to pay for our fare on the bus to go into the city, which is just so, that blows my mind. And we were downtown this last weekend and we looked around, and on one street corner there were 7 buses and most of them were empty. Just like, there's so many issues going on with the bus system, and then there's no real and efficient train system here in Auckland or any of New Zealand, which is just a huge oversight to me. Like, all of the major big cities all over the world have amazing train systems. I know another one that a lot of people like to complain about is that there's no bike or pedestrian lane over the Harbour Bridge, which has such bad traffic issues. But having said all of these issues, I know and understand that Auckland has grown so incredibly much so quickly, and so there's kind of no real feasible way that the city could have kept up with that. They are working on these issues. They are building new train stations and trying to improve that, and I know that they are trying to lower the bus fares. And I know that they propose the pedestrian walkway every once in a while, but it's like, these are really big issues and we can't just snap our fingers and make them happen. Like, it takes all of these different things that maybe we don't understand. So, moving on. The next one is just about how expensive pretty much everything is. That's kind of the theme of a lot of these points. But this one in particular that I'm talking about is groceries. So here in New Zealand, there is a duopoly of the grocery stores. So basically 2 different companies own all of the chain grocery stores, which means that there's no real competition. They can price everybody out. It's not a healthy environment. And I don't think Costco is going to change that much. But it is absolutely insane. So what I keep hearing from a lot of people is that there's this kind of weird thing that happens where New Zealand grows a lot of its own food. The problem comes when they ship all of it off to other countries, because they can actually sell it for more money. And so New Zealanders get left with all of the seconds of everything and kind of the discards, which is fine. Like, it's still locally grown, like, really good food. Maybe just not as pretty as some of the other things that they send off. But the issue to me comes when these things are still such astronomical prices, and it makes no sense. Like this garlic, for example. It's a New Zealand locally grown garlic. Why is it this price? On to the next bundle of happiness is the housing market here in New Zealand. Now, I know all across the entire world the housing market is kind of going bananas and prices just seem to be going up and up and up. But I think Auckland is one of the more severe cases that I've seen. The houses here cost over $1 million, like, no matter what. And it's just pretty disheartening to see as a new family that wants to buy a home in the next few years. Like, it's not a possibility for us. Next one is that thrifting is so overpriced here. Wowza. So as a thrifting person, a thrifting queen, if you will, I love to try to get everything secondhand. But when I came over here, I got such a sticker shock with the thrift store prices. It blew me away. I'm looking at like Trade Me, Facebook Marketplace, going to thrift stores, and they're all just so incredibly overpriced. Like on Trade Me, I'll find a dresser and it's like, oh, it has a hole in the side, the handles are falling off, one of the drawers is stuck, but practically like new, $200, please. It's like, that's not how secondhand markets work. In the US, you would find that on the side of the road. At the very least, they would ask for like $10, and that's basically just to get a little bit of money to basically have somebody come over and remove the dresser for you so that you don't have to. Now, I know a lot of people in New Zealand like to say like, oh, it's because we value our things more here, but I just don't think that's the case anymore. When you go to Kmart and buy some cheap piece of furniture, use it for a few years, it doesn't look so great anymore, you're trying to sell it for $10 less than what you bought it for, even though it looks like a piece of garbage now. I'm calling you out for that. And then I know for a fact I've gone to thrift stores and found like an Anko brand Kmart skirt. And then the next day I'll go to Kmart just because I'm curious and I'll look at the price tag. It is cheaper to buy it new from Kmart than it is to buy it used at the thrift store. It makes me so angry on the inside. Because again, with people that are trying to thrift, they're wanting a really good bargain. And so if you're trying to sell something used and it's only like $10 off, it's more worth it for me to just go to the store and buy it new, not to have to set up a meeting with some stranger that I'm meeting online and like come with cash or whatever. Like, it's so much more convenient for me to just go to the store and buy it. So if you're trying to sell it for $10 less, that's just not worth the deal to me. Anyways, in case you can't tell, I'm pretty passionate about thrifting. So next one is the damp old houses here. So it was quite a shock moving from the US to find out that not every house here has central air conditioning and heating. Now I think it's starting to become a little more common and normal in houses here to have it, but we are renting this really cute old villa style house. It doesn't even have a heat pump, which, before you yell at me, we signed our lease before the law went into place, so no, we don't legally have the right to a heat pump yet. So, but I feel like even if you have a heat pump, it's not as efficient and effective as a central heating system. We have so many cold and damp issues all winter long, and like, I don't really mind the summers. It doesn't get too hot, and a fan honestly does the trick. Our electric bill goes up twice the amount because we are trying to run heaters throughout the house to try to keep it a livable temperature, and it's still cold, and yeah, it's just costing us twice as much. So that is something that I definitely wish that New Zealand would hop more on the bandwagon with. Next thing that I don't necessarily love about New Zealand, I don't know, it's got a little charm to it, but on the same hand, it's kind of annoying sometimes. It's just how long and windy all the roads are. So like in the US, you have these freeways that are straight for miles and miles and miles, and it's like 80 miles an hour, you're going really fast, and it gets you from point A to point B pretty quickly. Whereas here in New Zealand, it takes twice the amount of time that I feel like it should. But on the other hand, it makes for some really beautiful road trips, and it's so much prettier, and you're seeing more of the country. So I don't know, it's a love-hate thing, I guess. I will say though that I've never seen so many adults have car sickness here. I've had multiple people just talk about how bad their car sickness is here because of how windy the roads are. So that's just interesting to me. Next is just how far away we are from the rest of the world. This has some pros and cons to it. Again, I feel like everything on this list almost has pros and cons. But some of the cool things about that is that we are so separated and secluded from the rest of the world. And so I feel like it's a cool thing to have. Like, a lot of the world doesn't have that. We are on an island in the middle of the ocean. The not so great things about that is I hate the idea of traveling anywhere because it's so expensive. Flight prices are just not a pretty thing to look at. And then the other thing that is kind of annoying with that is that shipping prices are so expensive just because it's hard to get things here. The next one that was a really big shock to me when I moved here is just how seasonally everybody eats here. Now, I am a person that eats mostly seasonally, and I really love it. I think it's a lot more natural. It makes a lot of sense. But if I want a tomato in the middle of the winter, it doesn't cost me $50 per kilogram. Like, it's a little bit bonkers to me. But it is just one of those things that I have learned to adapt to, and I actually really like it for the most part now. It's just something that took a long time to get used to. Next is how Auckland is a very cliquish place. Now, I've heard from friends throughout all of New Zealand saying that it's actually a problem throughout the whole country, but it's like even more pronounced here in Auckland. So everybody that grows up in New Zealand, basically they have their friends, they're set. So as a new person coming in, it's incredibly hard to make friends here. That's not to say that New Zealanders are mean or rude or anything. Like, they're some of the nicest people that you will meet. However, it takes them a very long time to invite you into their inner circles. Almost all of our friends here are from other countries. So usually we're out and about, we hear a different accent, and then we immediately like hook up? No, that's not the word I'm looking for. We'd immediately start talking, and we know that they're having the same issues as us as making friends with New Zealanders, because it's just a hard market to crack into. Let me put it that way. So another thing that just makes me a little bit sad to hear, I get a lot of comments from people that live over in Australia and other places, and they just talk about how much they love New Zealand and they miss it, and they grew up here and this is their home, but they can't afford to live here, which is why they're kind of forced to move somewhere else. And that just makes me so sad. Like, these people, this is their home and they can't live here because it's too expensive. That goes along with a lot of these points, like the housing prices and just even the groceries. Like, everything is so expensive. And I just feel like there's a lot of little things that need to change in order to make that not the case anymore, because I don't think it should be the case. I don't think that people should be forced to leave their home because they can't afford it anymore. So I feel like I've said a few contentious things. First of all, let me know if I missed anything. And then second of all, feel free to tell me your thoughts and comments. Just keep it nice. But again, nowhere is your utopia, and I kind of fell into that trap when I first moved here, because it seems like New Zealand is this perfect place, and for the most part, it kind of is. However, of course, there are some problems with New Zealand, but ultimately the good things far outweigh the negatives and the bad things about New Zealand. And so, of course, I'm going to choose to stay here as long as possible, and we love it so much. That's all I have for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.